I had no bank account, I had no visa, I had overstay fines, I had no health insurance, and I had no idea what I was going to do.
Your involvement with entrepreneurs,
Mm.
you're like an angel investor, you're
Yep.
as well a mentor since forever, basically,
Yep.
with a lot of entrepreneurs.
I think one of the biggest advantages of building a business in the UAE is your access to senior leadership.
The myth is that it's kind of impossible to get to these companies and actually sell to them.
The way you approach and the way you follow through and execute is just as important as the work you're doing.
What is the one tip that you will give to these people about the Abu Dhabi market? Well, Hudson, good morning.
Morning.
So, an entrepreneur, a mentor, an angel investor, for me, a friend as well.
Likewise.
Who are you?
Good. Good. Love being here. This is a big part of our story.
Tell me more about Will Hudson, please.
Originally from Florida. Um, you know, grew up in a very interesting town, Tampa, Florida. And for those that don't know, um, not a big city in the U.S., but not a small city. Um, it was very suburban, kind of quintessential 80s and 90s Americana. Had amazing opportunities. So thankful for the community I grew up in. I'm so thankful for the opportunities that my family gave me there. And yeah, I just had a great chance to dream big and to push myself and to be pushed. And there's a straight line between the community I came from, the way I grew up, and the life that I've built here and the business I've built here in the UAE. And I feel very lucky. Um, from Florida, got a chance to move out to California, and I worked in both Florida and in California. I worked in real estate early in my career, very entrepreneurial. So not large business real estate, kind of small and mid-sized real estate companies. And it allowed me to get my hands dirty, and it allowed me to take a lot of risk without um, risking it all, so to speak. And I learned early on that I was definitely an entrepreneur, but in order for me to move from being entrepreneurial to becoming an entrepreneur, um, it was basically a matter of risk and timing. And from California, I got a chance to work with the Walt Disney Company and start the social media team there and built pretty much their entire social practice across initially Pixar and then Walt Disney Animation and then a few other parts of the business. And that was a great primer for me to really say I want to jump in with both feet into social media. Um, that was, I think, the switch where I said I think I can take all the risk. And I was in Los Angeles basically off and on for 6, 7 years. And when I finally moved to New York City, I joined as a partner in an ad agency there. And that was when I made the switch from entrepreneurial to entrepreneur. And that's what led me here to Abu Dhabi.
The good news is that Disney followed you here.
Yeah, 13 some odd years
Yeah,
later.
a few years and it's going to be here on Yas.
We got a great opportunity in our first few years to launch Disney Arabia on social. But yeah, after that, other than Disney Plus, they've been pretty quiet in the region.
All right, so you landed in the UAE. When was that?
2012.
Okay, that's when we met actually. Like
Yeah,
took
yeah,
me
not
there.
long after.
And you launched LMTD,
Correct.
which is
It's a ad agency, for want of a better term, but what LMTD stands for is a physics equation, kind of geeky. I get grief from the team all the time, but basically it's the log mean thermal differential, which is the transfer of heat between two objects. Um, Social media, especially in 2012, was not a foregone conclusion. It wasn't the first thing people thought about, But for me as a marketer, for me as an entrepreneur, I saw it as a layer between a business or a community and their audience. And it was this really great kind of platform approach to it. And as mobile devices were taking off, I was like, how cool would it be if I could build a business that sat between brands and communities and their audiences? And I helped facilitate that. And I got really lucky having to launch Disney out in Burbank across everything. We did the first promoted tweet. We did probably 14 films and properties in my couple years. And seeing that impact, seeing that instant response, I said, this is an easy way to not just talk to fans, but talk to customers, talk to potential customers, engage audiences. And so for LMTD, that kind of was my nerdy way of transcending it. We want to be that layer between the brands and their audiences or customers.
So the reason why I invited you here today.
Yeah, why am I here? It's great to see you. I always answer your call.
For me, you're someone who used to come and mentor startups.
True.
And mainly your biggest thing was B2B business development or customer acquisition.
Go to market as well, yeah.
Between 2025 and 2012, like social media has become a totally different universe. And it was, back in the days, I think it was much harder to actually get into businesses and tell them, listen, this is my offering, and this is what I want to help you with. How did you tackle that?
Well, I mean, it's the difference between saying you want to go on vacation to a place where someone's never been. You need a guide. It's a dirt road. It's a hard to navigate river. It's you're landing a plane on a dirt airstrip type of thing, versus, hey, people are coming here all the time. We're going to lay down infrastructure. We're not going to use private boats. We're going to use barges, or we're not going to land on a dirt strip. We're going to land on gravel, and gravel is going to become concrete. And so over time, social media as a channel, the platforms that we market through have all become way more mature. And so the what is less important than the how. And even the how is becoming less important. And the why is really what's important with our business, and why LMTD. And we've really shifted from being, what I like to say, middle management insurance. Like if you are a marketer or a comms professional in the UAE, and generally you work in B2B or government. We also have obviously lots of consumer and healthcare brands too, but you would generally pick us because you want to have a partner that when things maybe don't go perfectly, they know how to land on their feet, they know how to recover, they know how to make the right decisions, they know how to fix problems. Ultimately, we're in professional services, and in our category, we're kind of consulting, advertising services. And that's a very human, that's a very people-focused business. People make mistakes, people are fallible. And so we run our business on the team side with a tremendous amount of grace. We run our business with a tremendous amount of forethought around the person. We like to say, we can get the player right all the time. They can be great at advertising, they can be great at social, but if we get the person wrong, we're in trouble. We really want to get the person right. And for better or for worse, people aren't perfect. And so our clients know that if we got the player wrong, but we got the person right, we can fix that. We can coach people up. We can switch them with other people on our team. But we generally try to not get the person wrong. And so as the business has moved from the what to the how to the why, I feel like we've been, as a early mover, 13 years now, going from strength to strength to strength. And for me as a leader and a coach, to use that metaphor a little bit more, I feel so lucky that I've gotten to lead the team, and I've got to coach the team, and I've got to move from, probably when I met you, I would have considered myself one of the top social media marketers in the world. I know that's a huge statement, but I really was on the cutting edge of a lot of stuff, and which made mentorship so much more rewarding as well, because you could instill and install a lot of those different theories and thoughts, which are now mainstream. But it really forced me as a leader to evolve. And, I have to also, as a business owner / leader, I have to fall in love with the business again and again and again, because what motivates me today at 45 is very different than what motivated me at 31 years old when I moved here. And I can tell you one thing, though, the one North Star has always been our people. We really do bet on our people. We believe in our people.
Yeah, I'm
Anybody
gonna
who's
tap into that in a
Yeah,
bit.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So anybody who's left the business knows that. So the why has kind of shifted now into me, for me, into my leadership team, and instilling creating great opportunities and instilling great values into our leadership team, and then giving them the capabilities to do the same within their teams.
So 2012 in the UAE, in a market where big names
Yep.
and big agencies exist,
True.
I'm sure you had a challenge in both, actually, attracting clients and attracting talent.
Correct.
Um, let's continue on the client side, and then we're gonna get into the
Sure.
talent. Yeah. How did you actually do it? Like you're new to the market as well.
Yeah. So had a couple kind of air quote partnership opportunities that I spent time evaluating and spent time kind of taking meetings with, none of which panned out. So I was initially a partner in my agency in New York. When I came out here, we were part of another partnership with an established media business / agency here. And the guys in New York and the guys here quickly fell out. It all happened above my head. I got a knock on my door early May 2012, and it's a true story. I had no bank account, I had no visa, I had overstay fines, I had no health insurance, and I had no idea what I was going to do. None. That's your trailer right there. That's our trailer. It's a true story. I had no idea what I was going to do, and I knew that I was all in, and I knew I'd made that jump from entrepreneurial to entrepreneur, and I knew I loved it here. I knew there was something magic, and so really it was about, I think the first thing was to not be afraid to fail in public. I think everybody wants to fail on their own terms, and most entrepreneurs set these scenarios or scenes. So if they fail, they failed because of this. And the reality is failure, really picks you. Like if you're sitting there trying to say like, I'm going to fail in this way, not only are you definitely going to fail, it's going to be harder on you, and the recovery is going to be much worse than it needs to be. So I knew I had to fail in public, and that meant going around and not really being shameless, but being really willing to put myself out there with people in a way that might be uncomfortable. It might mean asking for favors. It might mean having to sell myself versus my business. Everybody wants to sell the brand. And it also means, to your point, not just selling myself to the clients, but also to the team. I had to really, really quickly build a team. That May, when the initial partnership fell apart, my entire team that I'd put together painstakingly, that I'd onboarded diligently in New York, everybody left. Every single person left. And God bless them. They had every right to, and I would have probably left if the roles were reversed. I had one person stick around, and he ended up being a core employee for a few years. And I really quickly recruited 2 more people from established agencies that I had worked with on my first project. They enjoyed. I think that's the other thing too. I had to make it fun. I think it's very naive for people to think that everybody out here is motivated by money. I think people in the region, even back then, 13 years ago, were motivated by creativity. They were motivated by purpose and motivated by being fulfilled in what they did, because it's a very, very tricky thing, especially for expats, to be really far away from home. And you want to have a great time doing great work. And so getting those folks to make the jump and join me was just as important as, winning Visit Abu Dhabi. One of our first campaigns was creating the hashtag in Abu Dhabi. Just as important as winning Etihad Airways that first year, or doing work with Flash and winning F1. Those sort of things in that first 6 months were super pivotal, like really important financially, but just as important was hiring the right team to be able to fulfill that work. And so being selfless and being a little shameless and putting myself out there, being willing to fail, was really the only way I was going to make it happen.
I want to touch upon your point about the brand of the LMTD as a brand,
Sure.
and Will as a brand.
Sure.
How did you create the balance there, and how that worked?
That's a really good question, because as I get older, I think I haven't always balanced myself as a brand and the business as a brand. I think a lot of the ways that I branded myself in the first 5 or 6 years were really focused on giving back and my impact. Obviously, my business was born out of a failed partnership. And so as an entrepreneur, that kind of creates a lot of self-doubt, and it creates a lot of lingering thoughts of, am I doing this for the right reasons? Am I good enough? But you get on the other side of that, and a big part of that for me was settling down, getting married, finding the right partner, getting married, starting a family. And then the other side of it was actually seeing, full cycles of progressions of people on my team kind of growing and leaving, or growing and saying, I want to do more. And so making peace with the past was a big part of how I grew into myself and being comfortable with my brand. And then also making peace with kind of where LMTD sits within the marketplace. And maybe the fact that we'll be independent for a long time. All of my peers, as of December of last year, all of my peers or contemporaries from when I started have been acquired or wound down. And so for me, it's something I haven't always had great balance with between, my brand as an entrepreneur and a leader, and the business's brand. We did some content, probably in from years 6 to 10 in the business. It was really focused on vertical video. It was really focused on telling entrepreneurial stories, which everybody laughed, because they were like, your business, your clientele, your customer base is completely different from entrepreneurs. But for me, one, it was authentic to who I was as an entrepreneur. It was a natural extension of my mentorship and my community work. And two, I felt really strongly that if the right audience saw the content we were making, then they would persuade our customers. I think that's something people get wrong a lot, is they always try to market to the end user. They always try to market to the customers, when really your audience is the influential bit. It's very measurable. It's very predictable. When you build an audience, you maintain an audience, you grow an audience. Your customer base is going to go up, it's going to go down, it's going to go left, it's going to go right. Your customer base is going to move. But if you have a great audience, you've got real planning power. You've got real agency and autonomy in how you build your brand and how you build your business's brand, and then how you storytell with both of those.
Is that the media relations of the this era, basically? This is how you build media relations with people.
I think we're seeing media relations is like bifurcating or trifurcating, right? So it used to kind of be really wire driven or press driven. And I think media relations has a tremendous amount of nuance now. And the lines between marketing and communications are absolutely blurred. If you are a tier 1 or tier 2 brand, and this is no secret, I have this conversation with every C-level I meet with, whether or not they're a client or somebody I advise or coach. if you don't own your platform, and I'm not talking about a CRM database, I'm not talking about social media audience, that is table stakes. If you don't own your own platform from a content perspective, from a brand building perspective, from a narrative and storytelling perspective, you will always be paying for your reach. You will always be chasing your bottom line. And your competitors, and by the way, your competitors are not symmetrical anymore. Your competitors are attention. Attention is the real competition. And so competition and your competitors are no longer symmetrical threats, they're asymmetrical threats. So your customer might not be as approachable as they used to be because they get a ton of the value that they used to get from you from overseas news sources, or they might get a lot of information that you used to provide in, let's say you're a consulting-based B2B sales company. A lot of that consultative approach might be giving away workflows, or it might be giving away frameworks in order to close the execution of a project. A lot of that you can now build out in AI. A lot of that you can now build out in other places. So if you're not finding ways to kind of speed run that process and get your clients more of that, or get your clients more value from that, or show your clients why your value or your framework or whatever you're giving them to get the work or execution is better, then you're going to be lost. And I really believe that is where the conversation's going. We've seen some brands go too far, right? I don't need to get my news from an F&B company. I don't need to get my world geopolitical details from an F&B company. But if I'm doing a stock trading app or a retirement account, it's not the worst idea for me to get really relevant information on where currencies are moving, or where stock markets are moving, or where bond yields are moving, right? So I think we're coming back down to earth with the way that looks. And the bottom line is that brands have to build real nuanced platforms to talk to their audiences, and they need to be willing to grow audiences well beyond their customer base. Not everybody who gets your newsletter or who engages with your brand is going to buy. We know that. But you have to really be able to broaden the scope to think about who influences that purchase decision from your customers, and then build a platform for that.
You named a few big companies that you worked with, and
Yep.
I think you're still working with a lot of big companies.
Sure.
Etihad,
Yep.
Flash, which is Ethara right now.
Yep.
The myth is that it's kind of impossible to get to these companies and actually sell to them. And I hear this all the time from entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And like they say that these companies usually reject change, reject working with
Sure.
like smaller entrepreneurs.
Okay.
Is that a myth or a reality, actually?
I think one of the biggest advantages of building a business in the UAE is your access to senior leadership if you build the right value proposition and you partner with the right advisors and mentors. I think that is a complete myth. I think especially senior leaders are not hungry, starving for new ideas. They're very, very open to risk-taking. They're very, very open to ambitious thinkers, visionary thinkers. But there's a huge caveat. The way you approach and the way you follow through and execute is just as important as the work you're doing. I'll explain. Everyone fights for the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding, or the LOI, the Letter of Intent. They see online the signing of an LOI between a Western brand or a startup, a global startup, and the large government-related entity. They think that is the pinnacle. They've made it. It's like in entrepreneurship, venture-backed entrepreneurship, it's like everybody focusing on the fundraise. And through your years of building, startup and SME communities, that is the start of the process. So it really is about the details. It really is about how are we going to build out a sandbox for us to work together in. It's about knowing I'll give you a great example. There is a company that has come into the region from the U.S. and they're doing eVTOL, electric vertical takeoff and landing. Um, and they, instead of going to directly work with um, the aviation authorities, they went and found people who are doing a similar adjacent work to that, right? They found all of the regulated entities that are already working with helicopters, all the regulated entities that are already doing short hop flights. And they said, we'll partner with you. Um, and then once they got the sign off on that, then they went together collaboratively. So showing that they understand the marketplace, one. Two, showing that they understand the regulatory environment, they went together to the regulator to get sign off. And then three, they then together went to all the different powers that be, audio, everybody else, and said, hey, we actually want to manufacture some of these here. And just this week, they were at the Make It in the Emirates event, and they were one of the best stands there. And they had a full-size model of the passenger vehicle that's now FAA certified in the U.S. And the UAE is probably going to be one of the first places in the world to have electric vertical takeoff and landing, because this startup went through in a very diligent way, ticked the right boxes, shook the right hands, and they never made the signing or they never made the hype more important than the execution. And if you do that, I think it's a really repeatable way to work with C-level executives. It's a really repeatable way to work with some of the biggest and best brands in this region.
From 2012 to 2025, fast forward, how is Will and LMTD still relevant?
I appreciate you separating that, but we're one and the same, I think. LMTD has a really, really great story to tell. And I think it's really interesting to look back at our experience and where we sit in the marketplace. And on one hand, take credit for some great wins. And on the other hand, to say that it's not nearly as enough for me to be satisfied. We're not even scratching the surface on what I think we're capable of. And so we don't really chase relevance. I think we chase building consistency. I put consistency above profit. For me, I'll give you an example. In COVID, we lost 30% of our business overnight. 30% walked out the door. Our clients, for lots of reasons, had a tough time paying for probably about 6 months. Now, most of folks in the professional services world give you various guidelines on how many months of overhead you keep on hand. And we not only didn't let a single person go the entire time, we made not one redundancy. We got rid of one of our offices, not our Abu Dhabi office, but one of our offices. And our office boy from that office had a job for 2 years. So consistency for me is more important than profit. Consistency for me is, I think, why we're definitely relevant to our clients. It's why our average contract is generally about 2 years. And it's why our average client stays with us probably about 4.5 or 5 years. Our turnover is less than 5% a year from an employee perspective. So for me, relevance is really about doing more of the same. And in the next kind of phase of the business, it's how do I package what we've done so well, so consistently over the last 13 years, so that I can grow. I can go from 40, 50 folks to 100 folks, 200 folks. That's the only way I'm going to create real life-changing opportunities for the leadership team and everybody that works with us, is if I grow the business.
But being consistent in a rapidly changing world is a bit tricky, Like,
yeah.
How do you define consistency in that case?
When someone has a job when someone has a job with us and they execute on that job and the client echoes that and says they did a good job, they won't lose their job. And it sounds simpler than it is to execute in a professional services environment. I would say if you look at the agency world, employee turnover is generally between, on the low end, 12 to 15%, and on the high end, 25%.
Oh,
HR is a substantial cost of agencies worldwide. Recruitment is a substantial cost. Our recruitment cost is single digits, so that gives me lots of unfair advantages when it comes to being really disciplined with, our team working across minimal amounts of clients. That gives us lots of unfair advantages when we're talking to procurement and RFP officers about how many people we're going to dedicate to an account, and only this account. That's a huge deal for our clients. So it seems simple, but in reality, it's much, much harder to execute. In reality, we're building lots of processes, lots of software behind the scenes to make sure there's continuity when folks take leave, to make sure there's continuity if, God forbid, something comes up in their family, they need to move home, they want to go client side. At some point, a lot of our senior folks have a desire to go client side. I get it. How do we not have to pay 2-3x, or how do we not have to hire more people for folks that were just really good at their job and they had lots of institutional knowledge? So building out those processes and kind of building, LMTD's operating system has become a huge priority to me. And I generally try to operate 6 to 12 months ahead when it comes to our goals and our enterprise planning in our business. And that allows my team to focus kind of in that my leadership team at least, to focus in that 3 to 6 month gap. They don't live there, but when we get together to plan, they get the freedom to kind of just focus on that. And that really keeps us relevant. I think from a services perspective, again, if you focus on the how and the what, you're going to get stuck into a commodity loop. We really try not to sell manpower, meaning the contract is really just about embeds. We really try to focus on execution, which I know is the what, and then the way we sell it is very focused on the why. It's problem solving, it's business outcomes. When clients work with us, it feels much more consultative than, it does a simple execution or a content calendar or a community management request. It's really about what's the root cause, right? What's the business objective this root cause is tied to? What are 2 or 3 ways we know what success looks like? And then what's the best way to feed this information back? Is there someone here that's maybe not you that needs to be involved in this? And then how are you going to hold us to account? How are we going to hold you to account? And that changes the entire conversation with clients. That changes the entire, work process and execution process from something that is, why isn't it done? Where is it? To, are we still on track with these objectives? Does this outcome still look like the same? Do we need to make adjustments? It shifts everything from you're doing this for me to we're doing this together. And so, again, for me, that's what relevance looks like.
Your involvement with entrepreneurs, you're like an angel investor, you're as well a mentor since forever, basically, with a lot of entrepreneurs. I know you, even from this conversation, I can tell how helpful you are to startups and your insights. You're giving it in public right now to everyone. To what extent entrepreneurs are influencing you when it comes to conducting your business?
I think for me, entrepreneurship is a very personal thing. It is almost a spiritual thing for me because I believe entrepreneurs are artists. I think it is silly to think anything else. People that wake up with a desire to build for the sake of building, that's art. To create for the sake of creating. I relate to that. I connect to that. People with those missions and that mindset inspire me and excite me. And so every time I give back, as much as I give back personally and financially and professionally, I receive, if not fivefold, sometimes tenfold. That's when it all works out. That's when an investment hits and I get to make money on an investment, and I see someone grow personally, and I see them benefit financially, and I see their team benefit financially. That's just, for me, that is absolutely what it's about. But it's also about the other side, and it's about when things don't go right, and you get to be there for people if they let you. I've had lots of investments where things didn't go right, lots of mentorship where it didn't go right, and I got to be there for them in very low moments and support them and back them. And that doesn't always go great either, but at least I know that I was able to be there for them in a way that I would have wanted, the way I have wanted when I've hit rock bottom before, the way I needed mentors when there weren't mentors around. So that's a beautiful thing. Like I said, almost spiritual. I'm not going to say it's religious because I think that's a little silly, and I'm definitely not that motivated by other people. But I'm inspired, and it does fill me from a spiritual place. And it is art. What entrepreneurs do, what great builders do, what great creators do is art.
How do you make the time for all of this? You also have family, like
Yeah.
3 kids, 3 beautiful kids.
I have a phenomenal partner that was probably the best investment in my life. And we're a really good team, and we communicate a lot. And when we need to, we put each other first. And I have gotten a lot better as I get older, creating boundaries. I was not great setting boundaries when I was young, as a young business owner. Creating boundaries has been very impactful for me to be able to prioritize things and say no to things. I also have a great leadership team. I'm not a really greedy executive, and I don't take a lot of money out of the business. So it allows me to have, for a business our size, a pretty established and senior leadership team. And a big reason I care so much about the business is that team, being able to see them grow and really making sure that there's financial outcomes for them and for the senior folks on our team and the people who have bet on our business over the years. I'm very committed to making sure that they have great financial outcomes. So I think having those folks in my life is very meaningful. And then also just spending a lot of time really trying to get the operating system into reality, building great processes in the business. We have invested in coaching. We have invested in structuring our meetings so that and our goal setting so that they're really efficient and they're really transparent. We have a ton of transparency in our business. So that allows me a lot of flexibility and freedom, and that allows me the ability to set my own schedule. And I don't let people fill up my schedule with useless meetings. I don't have a PA. I've never had a PA or an assistant or anything. I set my own time, and I make my own priorities. And I have to tell you, like, if one thing were to really change, not being able to do that would be a real travesty. That's something I really treasure and I really value. And I think that is at the core of being an entrepreneur.
In 2four54 here, we have a lot like companies starting up, and they're new to the market. They have no idea what they're up to, some of them. And some of them actually started somewhere else and landed in Abu Dhabi to actually grow their businesses.
Yeah.
What is the one tip that you will give to these people about the Abu Dhabi market?
I definitely would not be scared of rejection or failure. Rejection or failure here is generally very, very, very diplomatic. And I wouldn't be scared of people copying your idea. I think a lot of early startups are very scared someone's going to do what they want to do. If you're going to be successful, you're going to have to tell everyone you know what you're trying to do, how you're trying to do it. And if you're going to be successful, people are absolutely positively going to copy you. There were multiple times where I coached folks, and at some point in that journey, in that mentorship, in that relationship, they'd say, why don't I just do an agency like you do? Why don't I just do this? And I was like, you can. And a couple people did, not directly competitive, but in tangential spaces around me. And I don't think any of them have been successful. It is very, very, very hard to replicate what someone else does. Success, especially from an entrepreneurial perspective, is such a personal thing. And when your first few customers work with you, they're doing it because of you. That's the thing most early startups don't realize, is that people are really believing in you and investing in you in those early days. And I still think even today I have clients that absolutely work with us because they know I may be not day to day. I may be not, the folks in the day to day may not, I'm managing managers at this point, right? So, but they know that ultimately the buck stops with me. And if something does go wrong, they know exactly how I'm going to fix it, the speed at which I'm going to fix it, and the quality at which I will make things right.
So you were telling me that people should not be scared from sharing their ideas because no one will actually be able to execute it the way they do.
Absolutely. The big takeaway is don't be scared. Don't be scared of failure. Don't be scared of sharing your ideas. And don't be too proud that if someone's doing something, if a client or a customer is buying from you, to know that they might be doing this just because of you, just on the back of who you are and what you're trying to do. Abu Dhabi, senior leaders in Abu Dhabi are incredibly generous. They're incredibly thoughtful. They have, especially today, more on their plate than ever before, more decisions to make than ever before. Abu Dhabi has really emerged as a global business hub. That was not the case when I started 13 years ago. And so the stakes are higher. But I think that makes now an even better time to start. And so don't be scared.
Well, Hudson, thank you for joining me for the 2454 podcast here in our Majlis and Community Hub.
It's amazing.
Always lovely hearing from you. Actually, I'm hearing things for the first time from you now after 13 years of friendship. So thank you for joining me.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.